Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Devin, for handling the first half. Welcome, everybody, to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, I was down on the field with some Iowa photographers and I think team staff members around. And at halftime, it's 7-0. And they were talking about the fact that Iowa always has one good half and one bad half in all of their games. And I said, I wonder if that was the good half or the bad half. Tony, it did not take long into the third quarter to figure out whether that was the good half or the bad half.
That was definitely the good half for Iowa, where they almost scored points, which was great. And then
almost did something extremely bold in faking a punt, almost, and then didn't.
We'll get to the decisions to punt from midfield-ish later on, Tom, because I'm sure
# profiles encourage. Yes, go on.
Until then, let's just all sit quietly and watch the end of this Alabama game on my phone. But welcome in. Ohio State wins it 35-7. The third quarter did Iowa in. It was just an overwhelming thing. But Ohio State rushes for 203 yards. Ryan Day talking about it afterwards. He was talking about how running for that many yards against Iowa is a tough thing to do. And I went into this game wondering how they would continue to just run. Like, would they abandon it? Would they start to get cute? And they kind of did in the first half. They kind of abandoned it, the running game, but then they went back to it in the third quarter, and you saw how effective it was. TreVeyon Henderson had 6 carries for like the first 3 quarters, and then ends up with a season high 11 carries. Very unselfish trio of Quinshon, TreVeyon Henderson, and Will Howard with a OSU career high 10 carries for 28 yards. Saw him used more. I thought this was an impressive day running the ball for Ohio State. They finished with 5.1 yards per carry, which you'll take against Iowa because the fourth quarter of that was just running out the clock.
Well, and you look at they got 203 yards and they got 5.1 yards per carry, and they did it without an 80-yarder to skew the numbers. The longest run was a 21-yarder by Quinshon Judkins. But you look at the numbers, and it's just you can just see the grinding it out just reading the numbers. 13 carries, 78 yards for Quinshon Judkins. Average of 6, long of 21, but it's a lot of 3 and 4 yards. TreVeyon Henderson, 11 carries, 61 yards, long of 12, but average 5.5. Will Howard, 10 carries. Is that more than he had the whole rest of the season combined going into this game? I think, if excluding sacks, 10 carries, 28 yards. Again, 2.8 yards per carry, long of 12. Jeremiah Smith 1 for 14, James People 3 for 12, Devin Brown 1 for 10. But it was just no one had. There were no big plays on the ground, but there were so many important plays on the ground and so many chances where they did what they needed to do. They stayed on schedule. All the stuff we talked about on the pregame show. It was, here's the 15 extremely unexciting, unsexy things that they're going to do if they're going to win this game. And they did all of them. They checked all the boxes, and they won the game, which is something, Tony, Roll Tide brackets derogatory, that not everyone in the top 5 did today.
And Vanderbilt in the victory formation now as they kneel down to win a game as, I believe, like 22.5-point underdogs.
Is that all?
So
it feels like it should have been more.
Congrats to the number 17 ranked Vanderbilt Commodores on Monday. But that's neither here nor there. There'll be time for that.
Let's take one moment to just let you know that the Alabama Crimson Tide now has a transitive loss to the Georgia State Panthers, Tony.
There you go. I think
3 weeks ago to the day, Tony, Vanderbilt went into Center Park Stadium. Tony, you don't just walk into Center Park Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia.
No. Well, you can, actually.
Well, I mean, other teams have gone into Atlanta and gotten important wins recently. Not Vanderbilt and not Alabama. Maybe Alabama got on one of those pedal tavern things in Nashville last night and got a little loose.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure anybody can just walk into the Vanderbilt Stadium and watch a game there.
The old, no, you don't just walk in here and no, you do.
No,
you just walk in
right
and
on
win.
in.
Except
for Alabama.
In this one particularly amusing case. Anyway,
so,
back to the Buckeyes.
Back to the Buckeyes. That running game. How often does Ohio State run the ball 40 times in the Big Ten? Because they did that in this one. That was the most rushes they've had this season. I'm just quickly scanning that 41 against Penn State last year, 43 against Wisconsin. But that was the only 2 times last year. happened more in 2022, but anytime you can get up there, you're keeping the ball away from Iowa. Not that you want to do that, but you continue to establish
it's
the
not
run.
all good.
No.
You are keeping the ball away from Iowa.
But they got the yards when they wanted. They ran it on 3rd and 3 and picked up first downs. This was a very it was like a methodical first drive of the game. The running game overall, I thought, was pretty methodical and effective.
Yeah, and that first drive was exactly, you watch that first drive, 14 plays, 88 yards, 7:36 off the clock. And I think ideally Ohio State would be a little more explosive than that. If they had the option to just do run the Jeremiah Smith do something cool play, they would have done that. But Iowa was kind of taking that away. There was a point in the second half, actually right before Jeremiah Smith caught the long one down the sideline, where it was 2nd and short, I think. It might have been 2nd and 1. And I turned to the guy next to me and said, time to call the Jeremiah Smith does something cool play. And Iowa had a corner right on him. They had a safety over there. Like, they saw that coming too. And they ended up doing it one play later, and then he scored a touchdown one play after that. So it is still in the bag. But I thought that was a very disciplined game of play calling for Chip Kelly, where he didn't get impatient. That's a veteran play caller saying, all right, you're not gonna let us hit the big stuff. That's okay. We will hit the small stuff 14 times in a row and score a touchdown that way. And they're up 7-0. And then when you're up 7-0 on Iowa, it starts to feel pretty quickly like, well, as long as they don't do something stupid, they're probably good.
Yeah, and they really didn't. Will Howard threw the interception, but overall, 21 of 25. I believe that's 84% just off the top of my brain there. You'll take that every time. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, and he has one or two throws a game that he shouldn't.
There's a Vanderbilt player grabbing the microphone away from the ESPN sideline reporter right now and yelling into it. I bet he's yelling in Latin. Anyway,
it's Nashville. I mean, there's only so much going on down there. But yeah, so with Will Howard, who was also part of the running game in this one, as we mentioned, you talked about the patience with Chip Kelly. They did the quarterback sweep power to the left a couple of times in this one. He kept it a couple of times on the reads, and those were effective. So it's just, as we get into Big Ten play against a defense that you need to find ways to get yards, they went to him. And then, of course, 21 of 25 passing, 209 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 3 of those touchdowns to Emeka Egbuka. First career 3-touchdown game. He's had an outstanding season already, closing in on all of the Ohio State receiving records by the day. And so Emeka finishes with 9 for 71, a lot of short stuff, but then also some of those end in the end zone. So there's no run after the catch in the end zone.
Well, and I was not in here for the Ryan Day press conference because the Iowa ran a ball control press conference on the other side of the stadium. So I was over there, missed everything over here. Was there an update on the status of Carnell Tate? Because I know he was a game time decision. He was running through some of the pregame warmups and looked like he probably could have gone. But was there an update?
I missed it. What was it, Kevin?
Yeah, he could have played, but it's that typical. He was held out. Probably break glass case.
Yeah,
he was on call.
Okay, yeah, and because he came out late, and I tweeted out that the wide receiver group had come out and he wasn't with them, but then he was out there later and was running through they throw the ball down the field and you run down the field and you catch it, catch the pass 40 yards down the field. So he looked like he probably could have gone. But we've seen this. How many times have we seen this over the years where this felt like Julian Fleming, half of Julian Fleming's career was, well, maybe he could go, but we held him out for precautionary reasons. No one's getting held up for precautionary reasons next week at Oregon. This is one where they probably felt like, okay, you've got other guys. You can run the Emeka Egbuka 3 touchdowns play. You can run the Jeremiah Smith do something cool play and be fine. Next week, you get thrown into the deep end a little bit. Next week, you're gonna need everyone full, all hands on deck.
Yeah, all hands on deck. Unless you're Jeremiah Smith, just one hand is all that you need. Well, I will say he needed both. He was holding off the defender with one hand and then catching the ball with the other. So technically, if you want to give him credit for one hand catch,
he just continues to be. Frankly, that was the one-handed catch. He would have scored a touchdown. He would have scored a walk-in touchdown if Will Howard had thrown it a little further. He had to stop and kind of turn his back and wait for it. But he and then had another one a little later in I think the third quarter where he caught it and he had the long one, and then he had the touchdown, and then he had one that was just kind of a sideline pass, and there were two Iowa Hawkeye defenders, and he just went whoop and just hit the R2 button and right past him. It just every time he does something, it's like, boy, there aren't very many people who can do that. And there also aren't many people who can do that.
Well,
and there also aren't very many people who can do that. And then if you combine those three, it's like, well, Ryan Williams at Alabama is pretty good, but there's not that many.
He had another crazy touchdown today. But by my count, and I did the research, so
is this like when you look down at the screen and figured out Will Howard's passing completion percentage? No.
Okay. Jeremiah Smith, the first player in Ohio State history with the receiving touchdown in the first 5 games of the season.
Mm-hmm.
So since Abraham Lincoln, since 1882, since the history of Ohio State football, by my count. Now,
1882 is neither Abraham Lincoln nor Ohio State University nor the Ohio State football program.
83. I will say there were times like in 1946, 48, there's a receiver who had like 5 touchdowns, but I can't get box scores for those. So it's like if that guy Merle Mangus had touchdown catches in each of those first 5 games. My apologies to his family, but if nobody's going to call me out on that, then I will just say nobody else has done it.
Yeah. It feels like any kind of Ohio State passing record, unless you're going to, you can more or less stop your search right around the time Bobby Hoying walked onto campus. That's about when the Ohio State passing records. Maybe Chris Carter before that, but yeah, that's just there's a lot of John Pasilla led the Buckeyes with 82 passing yards in 1976 or whatever it was. So
so I didn't have to go through all the box scores. I could just look at how many touchdowns were actually thrown this year. Oh, 3. Okay, I can go to the next
skip
year.
That. Yeah.
So Jeremiah Smith. Every week you never know what you're going to see, and that's a lot of the fun. And then next week, who knows what's going to happen there in Oregon.
One thing, let's talk a little bit about Oregon. We're going to probably go back to the Iowa game as well, but watching the Oregon game on Friday night, I thought, boy, Oregon's doing a great job really locking down that Michigan State running game. Now, Ohio State locked down the Michigan State running game as well. And we have a graphic that we'll put up later. We'll talk about this probably in some more detail, but there was the Iowa defense really locked down the Oregon defense really locked down the Michigan State running game. And I thought, boy, I wonder if Ohio State's going to be able to run against them. Watching Ohio State run against Iowa, it might look like that next week where it's not super explosive. It's not but that'll be fine because you just need to run the ball often enough to keep the Oregon defensive ends from being on top of Will Howard 5 times and to be able to move the chains and keep the defense kind of off balance. Watching them run the ball against Iowa, I look at that and I think they should be able to do that type of thing against Oregon next week.
Yeah, I think if you can run the ball against Iowa, you can run the ball against Oregon. But again, atmosphere, nerves, executing blocks, things like that. Oregon will do more crazy things defensively than Iowa.
One thing that will help is the fact that this game is not being played on the turf at Ohio Stadium because we have a super chat from Stray Dog. Fun game. What's the deal with all the guys slipping on this field? Only field in college you guys are slipping all over the place I've watched this year.
Well, we do see guys slipping. I don't know that it doesn't happen everywhere else. I don't know if it's just one of those things where it happens here because you watch every game here. And I only remember seeing one slip today, but it was an Iowa player that slipped.
Yeah, there was
maybe another one. But
there was another one or two.
I assume it happens everywhere, but it does happen every week here.
Yeah, and Will Howard, there was one where I thought Will Howard slipped, and I think he actually tripped over an offensive lineman's foot at one point. But, yeah, I thought at one point, okay, well, the turf's just wet. And then the turf wasn't wet today. And I thought,
it wasn't too
the
hot.
last time, okay, well, it was 145 degrees on the field, so maybe the rubber pellets are melting, and that made it slick. And then, no. I had someone during the game text me wondering about cleats. I took pictures of Will Howard's cleats just to see. I will get that photo up at some point. We can have that conversation on the Huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus at BuckeyeHuddle.com. But, are his cleats too short? Is that it? So the answer is I don't know. The Ryan Day answer on it is going to be, well, both teams have to play on the same field. So it is what it is.
It is very much what it is. Defensively, we've been talking about when is Sonny Styles going to have a Sonny Styles game. Career high 2 tackles for loss, tied his career high with 7 tackles, was around the ball. I think maybe was involved in 1 missed tackle. We got to be critical of all things. Cody Simon missed a tackle as well. I will say I could not tell how often they were in 3 linebacker sets because every time they go with an alternate jersey, you cannot see the numbers from the press box, and it is the most annoying thing in this world.
They were in 3 linebackers a lot. There was a lot of Cody Simon, Sonny Styles, Arvell Reese. That was a lot of those guys. I mean, just look at the stats, and you don't see Jordan Hancock's name on there anywhere. Sonny Styles 7 tackles, Cody Simon 6 tackles, Ty Hamilton had a nice day, 5 tackles. Davison Ignosin 3 tackles, but also that long interception. I thought that was going to be a pick 6. Caleb Downs, 3 tackles, but 2 of them for loss. He also had a big hit on the sideline where there was a receiver kind of on the sideline, and he knocked him about 5 yards out of bounds.
2-yard loss on that one.
Jack Sawyer had a sack, had a forced fumble. Lathan Ransom, 2 tackles, but one of them's for loss. It was just a very. It was not exciting. There were moments of excitement, but on the whole, it was not an exciting game. It was just kind of a efficient. I was trying to force feed you gruel for 3 hours, and Ohio State said, "Okay, we can eat gruel. That's fine. We can eat more gruel than you can," and they did.
I think one of the positives of that box score and those tackles that we saw is the fact that the safeties are down low. We expected Lathan Ransom and Caleb Downs to be more involved in the running game, and they would have been had they needed to be. But the linebackers were bringing Caleb Johnson down. So was the defensive line, and as Jim Knowles always says, when you have defensive tackles that actually make tackles, that makes life easier for everybody. And I thought the entire front 7 did a really, really good job limiting Caleb Johnson until the second team came in, and then he busted one, which was it reminded me, Tom. I'll interrupt you because you were interrupting me. I'm sorry I had to do it. Tavian Banks, 1997, when he came in leading the nation in rushing, and the first 2 plays of the game, Andy Katzenmoyer tackles him at the line of scrimmage or in the backfield. And then later on in the game, he busts one, and he gets like 22 carries for 80-some yards. And that's basically what we had here with Caleb Johnson.
Yeah, it was pretty efficient all game long. And they had you just look at the Iowa drive chart. And the Iowa drive chart is they had 5 plays for 75 yards on that last one. Other than that, they had 6 plays for 16, 10 for 42, 3 for 9, 6 for 23, 3 for 2, 3 for -2, 1 where they fumbled, 7 for 51 that ended with an interception, 2 for 2 that ended with a fumble, 3 straight drives with turnovers. That is not what you're looking for. And then after the 3 straight drives, when Ohio State is up 35-0, then they get 5 for 75 during who cares time. And the coaches are going to care because you don't want your backups to come in and just feel like, well, they're just going to march right down the field. There was a point that I thought they should probably have Will Howard and TreVeyon Henderson out of this game, and just it's Oregon week, whether the clock says it is or not, and so you don't want to get anyone hurt. No one ended up getting hurt, but you wonder if the fact that the defense gave up that touchdown, and Ryan Day's talked about, hey, you got to kind of keep some of these metrics in mind, and you don't want to, if you're up 35, you don't want to have that end up as a 21-point win. You wonder if that maybe played into keeping those guys in a little more and not having Devin Brown get 2 drives instead of 1.
When you watch Iowa, and I'm sure I don't have to tell Iowa fans this, they know what Kirk Ferentz is going to do with like every situation, and it has to be frustrating when you're in a 1-score game or a no-score game, and your offense has the ball 4th and 1, 4th and 2, 4th and 3 from midfield, and you know that you're not going to go for it. And then they do go for it and get it, but Kirk Ferentz called time, or somebody called timeout.
Kirk Ferentz said he called timeout, and he said Kirk Ferentz has this great Midwestern passive aggressiveness where he was talking about that play, and hey, why'd you call timeout? And he said, well, their coaches, you could see the linebackers kind of creeping up. Their coaches were out on the field, like in high school, and they had their linebackers coming up. So we thought we weren't going to make it. So we called timeout because we thought they were on to us. And you
It's
can
a
just
yard.
you can just run the ball. You need 18 inches. You're Iowa. You have America needs farmers. Strung on plow. Like, this is the whole identity of the program is we're big and tough and physical, and we can get a yard when we need to get a yard. Except when it's 4th and 18 inches at midfield, and then it's time to punt. And he said, I didn't want to give them the ball back at midfield. I wanted to, we were going to try and pin them deep, and it was like, okay. It took exactly one play for the ball to go right back to midfield. Yeah. That was a drive that ended with the Jeremiah Smith fumble, so it didn't end up costing them anything. But you're going to have very few opportunities to have the ball in plus territory. You had the ball very slightly in plus to territory there, and you needed 18 inches. It was like, no, I don't believe in my team. I'm going to punt instead. It's just so on brand.
And it started with the field goal, the 50-yard field goal attempt on 4th and 3 from the Ohio State 33 in the second quarter. So there were all kinds of decisions made in the second quarter that, it all gets wiped out, washed away by the third quarter dominance. But there was very little attempt at getting into the end zone, and that's the only way you're going to beat Ohio State is to get into the end zone multiple times.
Yeah, right.
That field goal is going to do you no good. Pinning somebody deep. Are you going to pin them deep every single time? Because if not,
right. That's the thing. You how confident are you that you're going to be able to out execute them? You're going to get a stop right there, and then you're going to get the ball back. You're going to be able to get a 3 and out. You're going to be able to get the ball back right at midfield, and then we're going to pick it up and we're going to run. We're going to take that torch and we're going to run with it. We're going to go right into the red zone, and then we're going to probably settle for a field goal. And that you're already down 7-0. You know how many points field goals are worth, right? You have to kick 3 of them to make up for the 1 touchdown you gave up. And sure, maybe you'll get a defensive score somewhere, but is that something you can bank on? I would submit that you probably cannot bank on it. So, but this is nothing new. I have watched enough Kirk Ferentz press conferences over the years that I thought, okay, here comes the we've won 10 games a lot of years speech, and we did not get the we've won 10 games a lot of years speech. But yeah, it was one of the real oh, come on, man, give your kids a chance to do something. Maybe they'll do it, and maybe they won't. Yeah, Kevin would like to know where Brian Ferentz is right now. Brian Ferentz is at Maryland. I don't know what Maryland is doing right now. I believe they're off this week. But yeah.
So, and you look at Iowa's rushing total, and most of it came from free plays, 86 yards on free plays, 2 28-yarders by Caleb Johnson, and then the Brendan Sullivan quarterback run for 30. But other than that, in terms of big plays, they gave him 4 explosive plays, and that was it. And the last one, or 2 of those, were the second team defense. So overall, really strong job by the Ohio State defense, as expected. But we also were wondering, hey, will the linebackers get taken advantage of in the passing game? And no, they did not. Because what can Iowa do in the passing game? Cade McNamara now, for the 3rd game against the Power 5, Power 4 opponent, fails to throw for 100 yards in a game. Completed 14 of 20 passes.
He was very efficient, but it was just constant checkdowns. You can tell he is a former Michigan quarterback based on what the Michigan quarterbacks are doing this year, where it's just Alex Orji 3 for 6 for 15 yards right now, and in that game, Cade McNamara 14 for 20, very efficient, but it was constantly he was completing passes, and I'm down on the field and I don't have it's hard for me to tell, was that 3 yards, was that 7 yards that he's completing this pass. And every time I looked up, I was like, was that a first down? Oh no, they just went from 2nd and 6 to 3rd and 4. It was like, wow, that was a completed pass, yes, for 2 yards. Both of them. Which was your favorite of those 2 yards? I don't know. I couldn't possibly choose.
And I think they were started out 3 of the first 5 on 3rd downs, and then got shut down from there. So, anything else? Special teams do anything for you? I mean,
it was fine. There was nothing. There was really nothing. I mean, Joe McGuire, 2 punts, averaging 38.5. Was fine. Brandon Ennis had a kick return where he got tackled at his own 14. That was not a great choice. No, not really. It was just kind of. It was
nothing there.
Well, and here's the thing. Go back and watch our pregame show, and we're talking about this is going to be a deeply unsatisfying 3-touchdown win, and we were way off base. It was a deeply unsatisfying 4-touchdown win where it was just kind of this is Iowa is going to Iowa doesn't ever accidentally get into shootouts The last time they scored 50 points might be against a Power 5 opponent, might legitimately be the 2017 Ohio State game. And that was such an insane outlier that you can't believe it happened. You'll have teams that will sometimes play 17-10 games, but also sometimes play 45-42 games. Iowa never plays the 45-42 game, except for maybe every once in a great while, once a decade against Iowa State, they'll have a weird one. But really, that's about it. It just doesn't happen.
It's coming down on the elevator, coming up on the elevator. Somebody mentioned that this is the first time in a while that Iowa has scored against a ranked opponent. And I'm just, last year Michigan shut them out. Penn State shut them out. Tennessee shut them out. Then you have to go back to, Ohio State 2022.
Ohio State 2022. But that was the touchdown, and that one was a defensive touchdown.
Yeah, so
that's the first.
Well, so then you go back to Michigan in 2022.
Yeah.
So, I had 35-10, so I feel pretty good about my intelligence.
35-9.
Kevin had 35-9, way off. And you were way off.
I had 31-13, which pretty close.
Couldn't be me.
Pretty.
Super chat.
Let's hit some super chats. Mike Farino says, "Sorry I'm late. I'm still stunned. Bama lost. Styles plays amazing today after the first series. Finally trusting what he's seeing in his fifth game as a linebacker."
And Ryan Day and Jim Knowles have really been adamant about Sonny Styles and his inexperience and how he needs to gain experience. He mentioned, I think, Jay Higgins, who are one of the Iowa linebackers. One of them is going to be the all-time leading tackler because he's going to be a 6-year starter, basically. But he's like, imagine how many inside zones and inside drills that guy has gone through compared to what Sonny Styles has gone through. So everything Sonny Styles is doing now, it's first, second time. And as Jim Knowles said this week, when there is a missed tackle, he has to think himself. Jim Knowles thinks, like, how many times have we put Sonny in that situation? How many times has he seen that in practice? Because if he's only seen it once or none, then he takes the blame. Jim Knowles takes the blame on that one. But Sonny looked very comfortable. Watching Iowa and their ability to cut leverage off and get to the outside in the past, I was concerned for the Ohio State linebackers being able to do that in this one, but they did a fantastic job in not allowing Caleb Johnson to get outside or not allow anybody to really get outside. And then they made the tackles inside. This is a big dude. He can break tackles. Oh, yeah. And Jim Knowles wanted them to get him and knock him back and not let him get 2 yards into 4 yards, 4 yards into 6 yards. And they limited him pretty well to just 2 or 3 yards on most of his carries.
Well, he came into the game not only one of the best backs in the nation in terms of rushing yardage, he was one of the best backs in the nation in terms of rushing yards after contact. Yeah. So this was going to be a great test for that defense in terms of what did we watch last night with Oregon and Michigan State? It was, boy, you've got Oregon running backs and they are either not getting touched or they're getting touched at the line of scrimmage and then they keep running and pick up another 9 yards. That's going to be real big next week. And this feels like it's not exactly what you're going to face next week in Oregon. This is kind of the B- version of that Oregon offense, I think. But it was a decent proxy for what the test. This is like the pretest. This is your PSAT for to prepare you for your SAT. Buckeyes passed it. The Buckeyes aced it for the most part because Caleb Johnson just never got going. It was just I didn't. At one point, I looked up at the scoreboard and it was probably. He had a 20-yarder maybe in the late second quarter or something like that, early third quarter. And before that, Ohio State had held them to 16 rushing yards. They had 70-something passing yards and 16 rushing yards. It was like, boy, that is not how Iowa wants to play. So if you can contain that rush, it feels like they're starting to bring, some of the different looks that they have. Cade McNamara talked about that after the game, that they brought a lot of different looks. He talked about the bringing pressure from the field side. They did that a lot, but he said they had some success sort of picking apart the zone, but when they weren't in zone, it was tough sledding for that Iowa offense. Fort Wayne Buckeye says Will looks much more comfortable with the read option and keeping it versus straight quarterback run. That I would agree based on, it looked, I don't have a great view of everything, but there were a couple that seemed like definitely designed quarterback runs. And it didn't look it just didn't look quite right. But man, some of those reads were the reads and the keeps. It was just boom, he took off, and there were some big gains.
And Will talked about it last week, how he needed to be more patient on the designed runs and the draws.
Yeah.
And I think he ran into some of that as well in this one. Whereas when you're reading it, the timing is the timing.
Yeah.
You're reading it and you're going, or you're giving it. And that was effective. And we're going to continue to see that. And eventually he's going to bust one, for a while. But to see him, when you've got a quarterback that can get to the corner and reach the end zone like he did on his touchdown run, I mean, it's one thing to be able to just get 4 yards up the middle and keep it and get 4 yards and keep things going. But when you can also get to the edge and outrace a defense, you're spreading them east and west, north and south, and you're showing the speed that eventually he's going to bust one for a while. And wouldn't shock me if it's next week. But yeah, reading it and keeping it, that's going to continue to be an effective use of the running game, especially as you have to focus so much on TreVeyon Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, because those dudes are running hard. They're running tough. You need to send all available men to stop that. And then it's like, just went that way.
Oop.
There goes the ball.
Oh, let me just slide right past you there.
Not it.
And then you have the wide receivers. You got to throw. It's like you need two guys on.
Yeah.
I mean, Jim Knowles talked about. Was it Jim Knowles? I think. No, Chip Kelly talked about it this week. You can't double everyone. You'd have a too many men on the field penalty if you try to double everyone. So that's the good thing about Ohio State having as much talent as they do, and they didn't have Carnell Tate playing today. So we'll see how that changes things moving forward. We did not. I don't want to disrespect our friend Fort Wayne Buckeye by not getting to the end of his super chat where he pointed out. We need to. Update from Major League Baseball today. The New York Mets 6, the Philadelphia Phillies 2. I consumed that game in exactly the way that I was probably best for me emotionally, which was only in very occasional updates when the Wi-Fi connected in the stadium. So I knew they were down 1-0 in the first inning, and then I didn't see anything until after the third inning, and then I didn't see anything until after the sixth inning, and then all of a sudden they were up 6-1 in the ninth. I was like, oh, well, this was probably much less stressful to consume it this way than standing and pacing in front of my television.
Well, we're all busy, so it's like it kind of goes into the back of your mind, it's just baseball. I mean, right? It's just baseball.
There was quite a loud cheer when they announced the Guardians-Tigers final score in the stadium. I thought for sure that might lead to a "Don't Give a Damn" song, but people maybe didn't make that connection. I thought Flacco might jump right in there.
That was a missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Real quick, the running game for Iowa, 18 yards rushing in the first half, 29 in the third quarter, 69 in the fourth quarter. So they definitely shut it down and as expected and stifled it. And so just wanted to mention that. So you got another super chat in there?
Another super chat from Ravi Tube. Should OSU be ranked number 1 now? Also looks like only Ryan Day and Kirby Smart and maybe James Franklin are the only remaining coaches who don't lose games they're not supposed to.
Boy, that's interesting. No, Ohio State,
Texas is
still stuck, and they're off this week, I believe, right?
Yeah.
So they did not lose, so they will move up. Alabama, now they did lose, but you have to understand, they lost to an SEC team on the road. So that's a half a loss. So it's not a full loss. So they're only gonna drop. I mean, Georgia dropped 2 spots, 3 spots. And Alabama's still going to be in the top 10, I would assume, because, I mean, again,
they did beat
Vanderbilt
Georgia.
is still they're still in the SEC. They did get that win over Georgia. This is a bad loss. It's not a good loss. It's one thing if it was like 23-21 the entire way, but to give up 40 points to Vandy is not.
Well, and
never leave that. Yeah, never lead. And
Texas, I think we'll see how the Michigan Washington game ends. Huskies currently up 7-0 early in the second quarter, but that's the best win that Texas has by a wide margin right now. They beat Mississippi State, who lost to Toledo. They beat ULM. They beat UTSA. They beat Colorado State. They beat Michigan. Next week they get Oklahoma, which is okay. They're fine, but they're not amazing. They've got a good defense, but not a heck of a lot of offense. And then they get Georgia in a couple weeks. So we'll see what Texas is in a couple weeks right now. The Michigan win definitely not quite as shiny as it was a couple weeks ago, because they had a narrow escape against Minnesota last week, and we'll see how tonight goes out on the West Coast.
Washington's touchdown drive, 13 plays, 83 yards, 5 minutes and 16 seconds. Alex Orji now 3 of 6 for 15 yards.
So they switched the air raid. Is that what I'm hearing? Mike Freno says Sawyer was also a beast today. That strip sack was the end of the game, essentially. That was the one that made it. That was right after it was 14-0, and then they had the strip sack that then Ohio State just punches it right in. And that was clearly, I think I saw Jared Smalley tweet that, it's Oregon week right after that. But it went from 7-0 Ohio State to 21-0 Ohio State in the span of a minute and 35 seconds. So that's a pretty big swing.
Yeah, and we talked about the middle eight that they're always focused on. They had an opportunity, the middle eight being the last 4 minutes of the first half and the first 4 minutes of the second half. They had an opportunity in the first half because they got the ball at like 4:20 something. And it's like, oh, well, this is perfect because then they're going to get the ball out of the third quarter. And they did nothing with it in the first half.
Yeah.
But then they answered back pretty well in the second half, in the third quarter. Didn't actually score in those first 4 minutes, but moved the ball back, moved the ball down, and it was 21-0 before you even knew it, basically.
Yeah.
First 7 minutes of the third quarter.
Yeah, that went from, boy, this is really an uncomfortably close game to this game is over. Like over. Yeah, very, 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 very quickly. Just trying to think through other stuff, other big takeaways from the game. Do we have questions we need to get to?
No,
let's
do that.
Let's start punching in some questions. There's 3 exclamation points there. There's not a question mark. I said questions. Stray Dog says, "Fun game, guys. Shutout would have been awesome." Yeah, I'm sure they would have loved to have
Read it like Ron Burgundy. Add a question mark at the end.
Shutout would have been awesome. Signy Dog says, "Nebraska beat Rutgers 14-7. Rutgers had 2 big turnovers that cost them."
I guess there was a lot of wind in that one. First of all, it was supposed to be like 95 degrees, but then there are also like 50-mile-per-hour winds. So you're probably getting like corn burn. Like husks of corn, just like, is in Nebraska? Yeah. So, dangerous conditions there.
Sage Ohio says JJ needs to use both hands to catch the ball, increase his catching percentage. His catch percentage feels like it's pretty close to 100% right now. So,
yeah, well, Tom, I will remind you, he started his career with a drop.
He did.
Had he tried to catch that with one hand, perhaps he starts his career with a touchdown catch.
That's true.
I'm not gonna critique the guy. I'm not gonna tell him what he should do. I mean, I'll leave that for other people on the internet to do. And constructive criticism is always welcome. I'm sure he'd love to hear it. I'm sure he would welcome criticism. Like, you know what you should do, JJ? Can I call you JJ? Maybe use 2 hands, like he's a little league outfielder.
Yeah,
2 hands.
Yeah, catch it above your head so that way you can line your eyes up with the ball and your glove. Yeah. Jordan Kapler says, "How much of a fool does Tom feel like predicting JJ wouldn't score? More than usual, or just a normal amount of foolishness?" Well, I got to tell you, when he got tackled on the 3, I was like, "Oh, they're going to hand the ball off right here and run it in," and dusts hands and walks away happily into the sunset. And no, and they ran the Jeremiah Smith do something cool play for the second play in a row, and then he did something cool. They continue to execute. Stray Dog says the OSU field is slippery. Too many guys slipping all over the place.
I'm going to ask. It's like I want to ask Ryan Day about that on Tuesday, but also it's Oregon week, and they're not going to be at home anytime soon.
That's a great bye week question.
Exactly. So it's like we're going to be talking about Oregon, and then we probably will get them to Tuesday after. But then it's probably time to talk about the Oregon game because it's a bye week. But it's something that does need addressed, and he does all of these. They commission all of these studies. I do wonder, are you commissioning studies about slips? Like, what kind of analytics, what kind of data is out there about slipping? And is there any? Should there be some? I think there should be some. I think you'd want some. I know they keep track of injuries and things like that, but what about footing?
Yeah. Signiog wants to know, did Jordan Hancock play? Didn't see or hear from him. He did. I saw him out there. He played a limited amount of snaps because they were in 3 linebackers a lot. And when they're in 3 linebackers, they take him off the field. I'm expecting to see a lot more of him next week because Tez Johnson, I mean, we saw him on Friday night. He had like 10 catches. It was like 10 catches for 84 yards, I think. But you're going to see a lot more Jordan Hancock next week. Iowa is just a team where they're not running a lot of 3 wide receiver formation. So you're just not going to see a lot of Jordan Hancock. And he played a little, but that's sort of dictated a little bit by what the opponent does. And I talked to Ross Fulton about that on one of the morning shows last week. When you go back and watch the defense morning show that I did with him, just it's on our YouTube channel. Ross talked about that and how he doesn't really love the fact that opponents can sort of dictate Ohio State's personnel based on formation and personnel themselves. Rob Yadatube says, how many first rounders do we believe we have on offense and defense? Is Will Howard a possible first rounder now?
I don't know that the arm is big enough for that. So I'll say no there. Right now, it's who are the definites, and even with running backs, I don't think you can say Quinshon Judkins or TreVeyon Henderson are definites because of the way running back is used.
Right.
I think you could say Emeka Egbuka, Jeremiah Smith. We'll see about Carnell Tate. The assumption is why not?
Right.
Based on that, Josh Simmons, the way he keeps playing he's playing as one of the best tackles in the nation right now. We'll see if he comes back and where he will be drafted. I think there's a lot of fluctuation, a wide variety of opinions on JT Tuimoloau and Jack Sawyer. Won't be shocked to see Jack Sawyer be drafted higher. I think you could also see Jack Sawyer also has the potential to be like a 3-4 outside linebacker, and JT could as well. But Denzel Burke, Davis and Igbinosun get there? He's been up and down right now. Caleb Downs, of course, is.
Yes.
I was told last year he's a top 5 pick. So, like the Ransom, probably not. It's hard for safeties. I would expect him to be top 3 or 4 rounds because he's played so well. But I don't know how many that was.
A bunch,
but enough.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably in the 8-ish range, something like that, give or take, and that's
not counting any of the freshmen that we haven't seen or second-year guys, really.
Yep. And speaking of freshmen, Mike Farino says are Jeremiah Smith and Ryan Williams 2 of the 5 best players in the country, not wide receivers, but players.
I always think it's interesting to just imagine if all of the players are available to be drafted. How long are people waiting to draft those 2 guys? Because they'll make any quarterback good. Almost any quarterback. But how long do they last? Quarterback is always going to be the premium. That's what you want to go get. But these 2 guys are more different than the quarterbacks are more different from other quarterbacks. You know what I'm saying? The drop off or the potential of those 2 guys is higher. Like Dylan Gabriel was the top free agent quarterback. I saw him throw 2 interceptions in the red zone against Michigan State. The difference between these 2 guys and everybody else is immense, and the potential is always there. And I think you want that potential. And I mean, just Ryan Williams today, they threw it up to him. He goes and gets it, spins out of it, runs, and makes another play. Of course, Alabama lost. It's a shame. It's a shame. Feel bad for them. Kalen DeBoer now
roll tears.
His winning percentage drops to about 94%. So that's unfortunate for him. But those 2. I mean, who else is in that top 5? Ashton Jeanty.
Yeah, Ashton Jeanty is legit. He is. I would love to see the either Army or Navy get the 12 seed in the playoff. But man, Boise. I would love to see Ashton Jeanty going up against a legit Texas or.
Not to interrupt you, Tom. Giles Jackson just scored a touchdown against his former team. So there you go. There's some little revenge. 13-0.
13-0.
PhD pending.
Yes, that's.
But Ashton Jeanty, Travis Hunter.
Yeah, and Travis Hunter is a little bit in a special category where he's like a Shohei Ohtani. Where he does stuff and you watch him. I'm not saying anyone has stolen his money to gamble on sports. Sorry, just to be clear. But he does stuff and it's like, wow, look at that guy. He scored a touchdown. Oh, look, he had an interception. It's like people don't do these 2 things. These are separate skill sets. And he does both of them at a very, very high level. The Heisman is by and for idiots, but if the Heisman was something other than most outstanding quarterback on a top 10 team, he would be a very, very legitimate, strong contender for it. I think Ryan Williams, I think Jeremiah Smith, those 2 guys, I think are probably, if it truly is most outstanding player, both of those guys should be in New York. They're not going to be in New York, almost certainly, because again, by and for idiots, but they should be.
Well, I think it wouldn't shock me if Ryan Williams gets there ahead of Jalen Milroe, because Jalen Milroe makes mistakes and Ryan Williams doesn't. And people see the mistakes that Jalen Milroe makes, and they only see the incredible things that Ryan Williams does. And it's like, well, we got to send somebody. And and if Alabama, now this loss obviously hurts, but if they're 12-1 SEC champs, it wouldn't shock me to see a freshman wide receiver go. Maybe Giles Jackson.
Maybe. We'll see how the rest of the night goes. Genty, just to put his numbers in perspective, Oregon did play Boise State earlier in the year, and Oregon won. But 25 carries, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns against Oregon. And that Oregon defense, I mean, that is a good, stout Oregon defense, especially against the run. So, yeah, that is a legit player. And for when Buckeye said Genty has 10 for 165 and 3 touchdowns with 6 minutes to go in the first half against Utah State. Utah State, not as good. Do you know what Utah State's kicker's last name is?
Groza?
Nimrod.
Oh, that's right. I did see some the prop bets for Genty himself, and like there were actual lines for 400 yards rushing in this game, like 300 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns, 6 touchdowns. But not in Ohio.
The Howard Griffith, was there a Howard Griffith line? Was that 7 touchdowns, I think?
Let's spend some time on Bill Evans here.
Bill Evans. Tony got a 9 out of 10 on 10 things people will be saying after Iowa. Only miss was about people not being happy with the run defense. Well, sounds like you've got area for improvement, my friend.
Well, I will remind people.
Yeah, A minus. A minus. That's not even a 4.0 in most
where I'm from
rating scales.
Is a high A. I will remind people, Ohio State gave up 3 explosive plays on the ground. 28-yarder, 2 28-yard runs to Caleb Johnson, not good enough. 30-yard run to the backup quarterback. You should be outraged. Hold people accountable. Send notes to your governor.
Erwin Lichtenberg says, super chat, Sonny Styles took it personally, played like a big dog, loved it. We talked about this a little bit earlier. It feels like, okay, you're starting to get the reps. He is not going to have his 10,000 hours and whatever people think about the 10,000 hours thing. He's not going to have his 10,000 hours as a linebacker for a long time. But the learning curve for a guy who is a good football player, but very new as a linebacker, the learning curve is going to be pretty steep. You're going to see improvement much quicker than you will from a guy who's been playing linebacker his whole life.
Now, just wait till he's in space next week against Terrence Ferguson, tight end.
Yeah.
Tez Johnson on certain situations. I mean, they're going to try to get Ohio State's linebackers into space, and there's going to be linebackers on the field.
Oh, yeah.
Because they need to be there. So it's going to be a bit different than this one where things are more confined against Iowa, because there will be the confines are not going to be as friendly, if you will.
That's the Northwestern game. That's later in the year. Before we move on to the next one, just remind everyone, hit that thumbs up while you're watching. We appreciate that. And if you're watching on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, make sure you go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell, because we do a lot of stuff that we'll do just on YouTube and not on Facebook or on Twitter. So, and we have a whole mess of content planned for you this week. I don't want to say we're treating it quite like Michigan week, but it is going to be a lot of content this week, because I'm guessing people are going to have a decent level of interest in the Ohio State-Oregon game.
Maybe even an airport show.
I did tweet out that this is Oregon week, and then I said, is it okay to call it Oregon week? Is there such a thing as Oregon week? I feel like there is. Well, with Day, I don't know, you guys saw it, like he seemed spent, and he was down there in the locker room for a while. I think he was sharing some words with the team.
Words of encouragement.
I mean, if you weren't encouraged by whatever chewing you were getting, then maybe over the course of the week you'll get right. But apparently people. I did also ask, do the Buckeyes win next week in Oregon? 90% of Buckeye fans say yes. So feels like an easy one to me.
Well, boy. Let's pull up. I know we have a graphic comparing the Ohio State-Michigan State game and the Oregon-Michigan State game, because I was looking through some of these numbers earlier today, and it's interesting because you go down this list. It's like, boy, there are some real similar numbers here in terms of total yardage. And it's not just total yardage because it also is yards per play. It was very similar. So it was like 2/10 of a yard in terms of rushing and something like that. And you just look through and it's both of them had garbage time and both of them gave up some yardage late. But for first downs, 23 versus 25 and 16 versus 14, and total plays 75 versus 71 and 50 versus 52. Red zone 5 of 5 and 4 of 6. That was it. Really, that's the biggest difference on this whole graphic. Is Ohio State went 5 for 5 in the red zone, and Oregon's quarterback Dylan Gabriel threw a couple of picks in the red zone. That's really the biggest gap here, because otherwise, 38-7, Michigan State scored earlier in the game, so the 10 points they got against Oregon was all garbage time, but very, very similar. This feels like a game where I think Ohio State's slightly more talented than Oregon, but they got to go on the road, playing in Eugene, playing at Alton. If you watch that game, Oregon has the highest home winning percentage since 2018 or whatever it was, better than Georgia, better than Alabama, better than Ohio State. Anyone in the country, hardest place to go in and win as a road team. So that's
nobody cares about that, Tom. Jack Tuttle is in the game for Michigan now. They have moved on to Jack Tuttle.
1 of 1 for 5 yards.
And he's had a 7-yard rush. So I don't mean to interrupt this show for the Tuttle show.
If you have seen the film Necessary Roughness, the documentary Necessary Roughness, anytime you can get a Scott Bakula aged quarterback in your game, it always turns things around. Wait till they bring in their new kicker. They have a good kicker. Dominic Zavada, but listen, if you can bring Kathy Ireland
or Sinbad,
well, I'm just gonna say the phrase this once, and then we're gonna move on to the next super chat. Welcome to Footballs. That was the height of early 90s comedy. Mike Farino says, QB change for Michigan. It's the quarterback that got OSU, Olave. Yes, in case you're wondering how long Jack Tuttle has been in college.
Oh, touchdown drive.
Ohio State was
yeah.
Ohio State was
Donovan Edwards, 39-yard touchdown run. There you go.
Well, everything's fixed. Ohio State was scouting Jack Tuttle out in San Diego and went, hey, who's that wide receiver? And the kid's name turned out to be Chris Olave, and I don't know what happened to him. But Jack Tuttle didn't go to Ohio State, so another failure in Ohio State quarterback recruiting.
Yeah. Indiana got a good one for a while, and then in Michigan, and then Utah. Was Utah in there?
There was Utah.
Did a stopover in Utah?
Yeah.
Everybody makes a stop in Utah.
Chris says Iowa has 4th and 1 with the so-called best running back in the country, and they punt. Yeah, that was
welcome to Iowa. I think at the
Kirk Ferentz, life in choices.
Yeah, the state line says, welcome to Iowa. We punt on 4th and 1 from wherever. Doesn't matter. We punt on 4th and 1 with, as you said, the nation's leading rusher. And then, I saw it mentioned in the private chat behind us when Will Howard, they had Will Howard run it on 4th and short or short yardage rather than give the ball to like Quinshon Judkins or TreVeyon Henderson. Some short. The short side, the boundary power sweeps with the quarterback with Will Howard was like, I don't know how I feel about that. But, Kirk Ferentz, you're just watching it. You're like, you're not going to punt, right? Why are you kicking a field goal here? Why can't you just try? He's like, they don't want to try.
No,
trying is So there are 3 things that can happen when you try, Tom, and 3 of them are bad. That is the Kirk Ferentz way.
Okay, I saw this next one and I thought, am I having a stroke? Do you smell toast? Lane Walker says Tim Beck offense hangs 40 on Bama, and we don't have that one on their bingo card. Not so fast, my friends. Correct. There are 2 Tim Becks.
I think one is too many.
Tim Beck, the former OSU assistant, is still the head coach at Coastal Carolina. This is a different Tim Beck. This Tim Beck
is better.
Yes, he longtime Pittsburgh State Division II coach, and then New Mexico State offensive coordinator the last couple of years.
The one Treehouse of Horror where Bart and the evil twin,
fish heads.
But it turns out Bart is the evil twin.
Mm-hmm.
Like Tim Beck at Coastal, he's like the good twin, but no. He is actually the evil twin. This is the good Tim Beck here at Vandy.
Okay, yeah, that was not on my bingo card, and that's a good thing. Bucks Forever 65 says Georgia wasn't doing so hot either. I think Georgia and Bama beat each other up last week. Yeah, I think that's probably true. And you also have just the emotional letdown. So that's a factor there. Goodness, yeah, Utah State getting run the heck over. Mike Frenos is also the offense didn't score. Sorry, they had a pick six, but yes, that's still the offense scoring 30 something off of the Vanderbilt offense scoring 30 something. They do have Diego Pavia, who is the from. Oh, he dropped an F-bomb on TV.
They're getting effing turned.
Well, yes. So good news. He's now qualified to be the interim head coach of the Michigan Wolverines.
Or he can host his own daily show on ESPN because Pat McAfee, those guys drop F-bombs constantly on ESPN. So I think it's just okay now. We could do it. Here, Tom, go ahead.
Use his full title, consummate professional, Pat McAfee. Lisa Sims says, good evening, guys. Wow, what a week it's going to be for the Buckeyes and Duck fans. 2 undefeated top 5 teams with the Bama loss on primetime TV next Saturday night. I don't want to be ranked number 1. I don't think that's going to be a problem. I think you're going to just probably see Texas slide up. This was not such a dominant win. I think you're going to have everyone south of the Mason-Dixon line is going to go, well, it was 7-0 at halftime. You got to keep Texas above them. They beat Michigan. Ohio State hasn't beat Michigan since 2019, Tony. It's science. What could you argue about with that?
Well, we'll see how Texas does in the Red River rivalry because that is that same weekend. Mm-hmm. We have seen worse Oklahoma teams beat good Texas teams.
That game is a random.
Crazy. Yeah.
Oklahoma has a rivalry called Bedlam, and it has an actual rivalry that is Bedlam.
Yeah.
The Red River rivalry is Bedlam. The Bedlam is just how many points is Oklahoma going to beat Oklahoma State by this year, except for the last one where Oklahoma State won, and now they're not going to ever want to play Oklahoma again because it's like, scoreboard, sorry.
But, I mean, Oklahoma has played teams ugly this year, so they may be able to do the same thing with Texas.
Speaking of ugly, Bucks Forever 65 says, Tom, your hat is still ugly. And you know what? Respectfully disagree, but that's okay. Not everyone is cool enough to be up 1-0 in the NLDS. Kevin's team isn't up 1-0 in the NLDS. Have they played yet? No. Doesn't matter.
And I have no faith in this one. We got this one before the touchdown.
Okay.
Jordan Kapler says, a Michigan friend of mine just said he might need to turn the game off. I told him to find a baseball game and suggest the Astros. Them and Michigan have something in common.
What is that?
A love of electronics and sports. And trash cans.
Esports. They're gamers. That's all.
Yes.
Tennessee is still struggling.
Tennessee is still struggling.
3-0 in the second quarter. Yes.
Oh boy, that's see. I think there's probably a lesson here. It's not the lesson that everyone wants to learn, which is that everyone in the SEC is secretly terrible. That's the lesson everyone wants it to be. That's not the lesson that it is. The lesson that it is every team is going to have these close games. Ohio State is going to have a close game at some point this season. They are not going to 1995 Nebraska the entire nation for the entirety of the season. You need to prepare yourself for the fact that it may be a close game next Saturday in Eugene. I think that is, everyone right now is looking and Ohio State and going, well, look, they're great. They've answered all their questions. Prepare yourself for a close competitive game in Eugene next week. A game where I don't know if that is a game where Ohio State is going to be able to leave no doubt. They may very well win. I'm not saying they're going to win. But that's not a game I'm expecting them to be up 3 scores in the fourth quarter where it's a real leave no doubt game.
No, and I'm still expecting. We'll see. Ohio State may have played well enough now to go in there as a favorite. They were an underdog for a little while.
I mean, I saw it was like a 2-point line or something like that. I think the line has moved a little bit, but it's kind of stayed very much in that 1 to 2 points kind of range.
Right now, it looks like you can get it -3 Ohio State.
Okay.
So, but it is.
Yeah, I've seen 2.5.
It's fluctuated a little bit.
3 points is still a very close game. Let's do some expectation setting here. That's going to be a very good game.
Yeah, no, for sure, and that's also going to be one where there could be some wild swings, 14-point swings. So I'm fascinated to see how it all goes. Will Will Howard have the one random bad throw in there, and how costly? Because it'll be more costly against an Oregon than it is against an Iowa or a Michigan State. And even though Michigan State scored on their errant throw from Will Howard last week, it turned it into a touchdown.
Yeah.
You can't give Oregon any short fields, any freebies. You got to make them earn everything.
Well, and I think you look at Will Howard and go, oh boy, he's made some mistakes over the last couple of weeks. Guess what? Dylan Gabriel threw 2 picks in the red zone last night. These are, you look at the quarterbacks, you look at the backstories there. These are very, very similar teams, and they've got a lot of the same strengths. They've got some of the same weaknesses. I will reiterate once again, this is going to be a really, really good game. I'm looking at Arkansas has run 35 plays. Tennessee has run 11 so far. It is 6:47 left in the second quarter. Arkansas just turned the ball over on downs to Tennessee.
All right, let's talk about Emeka and Jeremiah Smith. Emeka, as we mentioned, Emeka rising in the standings of all Ohio State receiver stats. I think we've got a graphic here. 3 touchdowns today, career high.
Yep.
He's had a couple of 2-touchdown games. I wonder if this will be his last 3-touchdown game. It would not shock me if it is. There you see Jeremiah Smith rising up the freshman standings. Pretty much it's just going to be Jeremiah Smith. It's like when back in the days with arcades, when you would have a game that you played and you would be like, I'm going to have all of the high scores on asteroids or centipede. And Kevin would do that. And I would be CAT. I would be CAT because that was what my brother did. I was like, I don't know. Why don't I just do my initials? I don't know. I'm just going to do what my brother did. His initials were not CAT. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. But he's just going to have all of the high scores until somebody, Chris Henry Jr., comes in and unplugs the back of the machine. And that way you can redo all of the high scores.
Chris Henry Jr., just in case people didn't notice, did get injured on Friday night. It sounds like he's going to miss the rest of the high school season. So,
but he did tweet out, I will be back next year.
Freshman receiving touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith now already at number 3, already passed Garrett Wilson. He's already passed Ted Ginn. He's already passed Chris Olave. He's already passed Marvin Harrison. It is still October 5th. He might have that. They've played 5 games now. And they might have 11 more games. That is
look at that.
And he's already 20. He's already 5th in freshman receiving receptions in a season. He's got 23, 2 away from catching Ted Ginn. That will probably happen next week. 7 away from catching Garrett Wilson. He could have 10 catches next week and tie David Boston. That's not out of the realm of possibility that could happen.
It's ridiculous.
It is crazy. And then here's Emeka Egbuka, career receptions. He's now tied with Gary Williams at 7th, 1 behind Marvin Harrison Jr. with 11 next week. He would tie Michael Jenkins for 5th all time. He's moving up that line.
Yeah, I don't think he'll get to the 11 next week, but there you see.
And then Emeka Egbuka, 10th and only 5 yards behind Santonio Holmes for career receiving yards. I think Santonio Holmes is remembered as a crazy Ohio State player based somewhat on his pro career and being a Super Bowl MVP and all that kind of stuff. And Emeka Egbuka, I don't know. I think Emeka Egbuka has sort of been overshadowed to a certain degree where he was the guy who got to play across from Marvin Harrison. And then now he's the guy who gets to play across from Jeremiah Smith. Emeka Egbuka's had a remarkable career. I think if you ask people based on number 1 receiver in the country, 5-star guy, has he lived up to your expectations? I think there's a lot of people that would kind of go, maybe. He's had a remarkable career at Ohio State.
I think some people have forgotten his sophomore season when he had 76 catches for 1,100 yards and was one of very few sophomores to have 1,000 yards receiving. I think maybe just him and Marvin Harrison at that point. Until Jackson Smith-Njigba did it as well.
And yet tied for 10th now with 19 career touchdown receptions, 1 away from KJ Hill for 9th. Give him what, 5 more, 6 more for the year. I think that's a very reasonable number. And all of a sudden you're into 6th. You're passing Garrett Wilson. You're passing Santonio Holmes, and he could. He had 3 today. He could certainly have a lot more than 6 or 7.
Does Jeremiah get to that 35? Does he reach Chris Olave? If he's here 3 seasons.
well, he's currently scoring an average of about 1.5 touchdowns per game. So
Yeah, but these are receiving touchdowns. He's only averaging 1.16 or 1.2 per game there. So, he's eventually going to get there. 35 touchdowns. I think we even did a show where we're trying to predict exactly the game.
Yeah.
And it was midway through his junior season, I believe.
Yeah. And we might have been too conservative on that. Mike Ferguson says, can we start a fundraiser to rip up the turf and install it in Tom's yard? My yard is finally looking good now that it rained in Ohio for the first time in 2 months.
Yeah, no, we don't want to put that turf in anybody's yard. It's not safe for anybody. But again, we will eventually talk to Ryan Day about this and to see, is it bad, or is it just bad because we watch Ohio State? Is this the same everywhere?
Right.
Ohio State's not the only place that has this kind of turf. It's around the country that has it. I don't think this is just an Ohio State problem. I'm not saying it isn't an Ohio State problem,
right?
But I don't think it's just Ohio State.
Well, and I think there's a little bit of probably confirmation bias where you've heard about the split film turf from the NFL, and so everyone's now looking for it. And now every time anyone slips, everyone goes, "Aha!" And the issue with the split film turf that the NFL flagged was the exact opposite of guys are slipping. It was guys are getting their cleats stuck in it, not slipping. So I think there may be a little bit of confirmation bias there, but we'll see if they have data on it. I'm sure. Yeah. If they have data on it and the data says it's fine, I'm sure they'll tell us. If they have data on it and the data says, you might want to, I think the expected life of that turf is like 8 to 10 years, and they've gotten 2 out of it. So we'll see if they want to continue doing that. Mean Green says, with today's performance by Ohio State, what feeling do you have going into the Oregon game next Saturday night with the way they handled Iowa in the second half? Do they handle the Ducks like that?
Well, I think the one thing you can't do is apply this game to another game in terms of, they're going to do this in the second half because they did it against Iowa. What I do think you can look at and say, Ohio State ran the ball in Iowa, a tough defense. They should be able to run the ball. I don't see Oregon shutting them down in the running game. That should open up some other things. Now, Oregon will blitz more, and they'll create more havoc. So Will Howard will have to handle that better. But getting Carnell Tate back will help in terms of the outside playmaking. You'll have him back. So I think you're looking at 2 very different offensive attacks for Ohio State. But hanging your hat is something that Ryan Day gets asked about. What does this offense hang their hat on? I think you can see they can start hanging their hat on that running game, and that will travel, assuming people can just handle the environment and the nerves of such a big game.
Well, and you've got such a veteran team that this is not going to be the first time virtually any of these guys, other than Jeremiah Smith, have played in this kind of an environment. There's a ton of returning starters from last year. Will Howard played at Texas when he was at K-State, and Caleb Downs when he was at Alabama, and Seth McLaughlin when he was at Alabama. Like, these guys have all played in these big games. They haven't always won them, but you've played in these kind of environments before. This is not going to be Dylan Raiola and the true freshman Nebraska quarterback coming into Ohio Stadium and going, boy, there sure is a lot of seats around here. I think you're going to dead on. I mean, it's one of my better ones. You want to hear Australian Dylan Raiola?
More than anything.
Maybe after the show. I think this is a team that is poised to go in and be able to handle itself. I think they checked a couple of the boxes today in terms of they can run the ball against a good defense. They can tackle and get a good running back to the ground with a decent, pretty decent offensive line. I think they answered some of the questions for me today. Are they going to have, a 35-0 lead on Oregon next week? No, I do not think they are going to have a 35-0 lead on Oregon. I absolutely think they can win that game. I think that is absolutely a winnable game. I think that's a game, I don't know if I'm going to say it's a game they should win, but it's a game that they absolutely can win. And we'll probably get into this a little later in the week, but if they lose, whoever loses this game, it's not a no-lose game. Whoever wins this game has a monster win and probably is functionally almost in the college football playoff field, like you stamp your ticket there. Whoever loses is going to probably get another crack at the other team in Indianapolis unless you get a crazy upset at some point, and might get another crack at the other team in the college football playoff as well. So this is a game that I think mentally, in terms of mental well-being, the Ohio State fan base would do well to go into the game thinking this will be a good football game. This will be an exciting football game. If Ohio State wins, it will be a great thing. If Ohio State loses, it will not be the end of the world because Ohio State will have, in the new world of the college football playoff, 12 teams, you got a freebie. They probably can lose 2 games and still make the college football playoff. And if you have the talent that you have on this team, all you got to do is make it, and then you just let it go.
Well, and we even talked before the season, the over-under of being 1.5 on times Ohio State and Oregon would play this year, and I think we both took the over on that.
Mm-hmm.
So, regardless of what happens next week, I don't think that'll be the last time these two teams play one way or the other. But if you get that win this week, you have a get-out-of-jail-free card that you can play for any other game the rest of the regular season, and even in the Big Ten championship game.
My advice to them would be to not immediately light it on fire like Alabama did.
No,
Alabama, congratulations, you have a get out of jail free. Yeah, take it.
Yeah.
Super chat from Mike Farino says Donovan Edwards likes playing against Washington. Apparently playing very well. Yeah, he's had 8 carries, 77 yards, a touchdown, a 39-yarder, averaging 9.6 yards per carry. What's fascinating to me is Khalil Mullings, who has been so consistent and so good all year, 6 carries, 20 yards, 3.3 yards per carry. Let's see what the rest of the day looks like. It's 14-10 right now.
And when Donovan Edwards is having a good game against Washington this year and last year, and then nothing between, that tells me it's as much Washington as anything else. And the way he's played this year, he's needed some help, some missed tackles, some broken tackles to get going. And so we'll see if he can continue that. There's no reason to think he can in terms of the rest of the season. Yeah. But this is always what he is capable of doing. This is always what he has the potential to do. Yeah. He just does not do it that much.
Yeah. I have a few things we do want to get to as we're kind of checking some of our boxes. One of them is get a chance to talk to Iowa tight end Luke Lachey after the game. Now, this is normally we give you a bunch of Ohio State interviews. Luke Lachey, a little bit of a unique story. He is a Grandview Heights kid, son of former Ohio State offensive line great Jim Lachey, who does the color on the radio broadcast. I was not listening to the broadcast. I'm not sure how they handled that on the broadcast, but he was a tight end coming out of high school who Ohio State probably should have offered. That was the class where they took Joe Royer, and you look at how Luke Lachey has panned out versus how Joe Royer has panned out, and there's been some twists and turns to the Joe Royer story. So that's not necessarily quite as clear cut as you might think. But Luke Lachey was asked a couple times about what coming back, what it was like. Just going to let you hear just a couple minutes from Luke Lachey, and then we'll get back to a couple other things that we wanted to get to.
The game is like for the offense. Seemed like a few things got going early that it kind of slowed down.
Yeah, I just feel like the big thing is we need to finish drives there in the first half. We got the ball down there and in their side of the field, and didn't finish. So that's a big thing that we got to continue to work on, and we will.
What was the day like for you? Given everything, it wasn't how we thought it was as a team. We wanted to come down here, and it was a business trip for us to come down and win a game, and obviously that didn't happen. So that's upsetting, and now we just got to work forward and continue to play and focus on next week. But as far as coming back here, it was fun. It was a cool experience. It was nice to be back and be a captain and walk out there and everything. And it was a cool moment. But at the end of the day, it's still exciting.
Does it make much difference coming back here where your dad was?
That's a cool moment in itself. Playing here, we don't know where my dad played, but obviously as a team, we're trying to win a game. So it's upsetting, and we just got to keep working and keep finishing.
I'm sure you guys came in here thinking you could win the game, right? Were you surprised at how out of hand it kind of got, I guess?
Absolutely. There's just, it didn't go our way there, in the second half. They made some great plays. They're a great football team, and we just got to continue to work to get that stuff fixed up for us. And it was just a tough way to start the half.
Luke, you may have been asked before I walked up, but obviously your dad's in the booth, but more than that, your whole family in the stands, wearing the shirts. Just what did that feel like to kind of have that community here with a lot of familiar faces around?
Yeah, it's great. It's really cool. I was overwhelmed. It was awesome, and to see everyone tailgating there before the game and coming out, coming off the bus and giving a hug to all my siblings and my mom and my girlfriend Emma. It was great. So it was cool to see them and obviously playing in front of my dad, but obviously we didn't get the goal done, our job done. So we just got to keep working to finish.
So that was Iowa tight end Luke Lachey, son of former Ohio State great Jim Lachey, talking about the game, getting to come back home, getting to play in front of all his family and friends, all that kind of stuff. Thought that was just kind of a fun little angle to the story. If you want to hear more from the Iowa Hawkeyes, have an interview with former Michigan quarterback Cade McNamara, who obviously now the Iowa quarterback. That's on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. We also have the full Kirk Ferentz press conference. That's also at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. So we generally try and get all that stuff up there for you, just to give you kind of a full, robust coverage of everything. This week coming up is going to be a week of full, robust coverage of everything. I've already been pulling Oregon press conferences. We're going to do a Michigan Monday show, but we're also going to do an Oregon Sunday show, rewatching the Oregon-Michigan State game. So this is going to be a big game week at BuckeyeHuddle.com. So if you are looking if you're thinking, how will I fill all the time between now and Saturday? Well, friends, we're going to be putting content in your eyeballs at YouTube and also on BuckeyeHuddle.com. So that's all exciting stuff.
For sure. A big week. We're going to cover it like it's a big week. And we will get out to Oregon on Thursday.
Yes, we're out there earlier than just about anyone else, which is it's gonna be a long trip. We're gonna have a lot of time out there, but a lot of we spent a lot of Friday night texting back and forth with ideas on stuff we wanted to cover and all that stuff. So there's gonna be a lot of great stuff.
And if you guys would like to see something, feel free to throw us some suggestions. We'll see if we can do that.
Yeah.
We only have a limited amount of time. This is like a short turnaround, a ball trip type of thing, but we do have some time.
Mike Ferguson says, make sure Kevin gets his in and out. Don't worry.
Don't worry.
We're staying in Portland. We don't want to spend 4 hours round trip in the car with him 2 days in a row. I will. All right. Kevin will be our monkey and eat 6x6. I'm not sure that's what monkeys. I'm not sure that's healthy for a monkey, but
pray for mojo.
Pray for mojo. Yes. I will let you know already. The Goonies house, wrong direction. So I thought maybe we could go to the Goonies house, but no.
What about Fraser's house?
That's in Seattle. That's
is it the wrong direction?
It is also the wrong direction. Yes.
What about Clyde Drexler's house?
Maybe. Is the Portland Rose Garden there? I do not know.
Jerome Kersey?
Maybe.
Sam Bowie. Sorry. I'm done. Sorry.
I think he just rented. He wasn't there very long. We do have photos that we can go to from the game. We don't need to do 1,000 of them. Tony, I got to tell you, I was not a big fan of the play calling from Ohio State that constantly they scored 4 of their 5 touchdowns on the other side of the field. That's on Chip Kelly. I hope he does some internal study. Hope they do a study on that. I plan to ask Ryan Day about that midweek.
Well, we may talk to Chip Kelly on Tuesday.
Yeah,
why don't you bring this up? See what he thinks.
Yeah, I'm sure that's going to be the big topic of conversation.
Chip, the angles, the directions, the corners of the end zones. Do you think maybe you should consider the photographers?
Yeah, they did a lot of the stuff on the side where the stupid network had their stupid jib camera and was blocking most of the side of the end zone. So are they jerks? Listen, I don't know.
Yes.
We're not here to call names. We're also not here to call names about the referee who stood directly in the way of what otherwise would have been a wonderful photo.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Deeply, deeply annoying. But yes, there's Jeremiah Smith's one-handed touchdown catch.
It's always amazing and I'm sure it's the same wherever you're watching the game and you see him do this. And everyone just like laughs. And the press box does the same thing. It's just it's hilarious.
There's no cheering in the press box. There is sometimes laughter.
Yes.
This was the only one, Tony, that happened on my side of the field all game long. This was the third Emeka Egbuka touchdown. There's Will Howard throwing. Emeka
beautiful throw.
Getting up there, catching it. Yep. Nice catch there. And took it to the ground there. And a little get a nice smile, nice little celebration from Emeka. 3 touchdowns, a lot to smile about.
He waited until the last second to put his hands up. on
Yeah.
that touchdown,
Yeah.
and he didn't let the defender know the ball was coming. The dude is crafty. He's a veteran, and he showed it on that play. Really good game for him overall.
Yep. There's this is first quarter. Ohio State did take the sun in the first quarter, which I always appreciate. You actually get some nice lighting. You don't have all backlit photos, but there's the offensive line hard at work in the first quarter of the game. They had a nice day. Offensive line did. Jeremiah Smith. There's the fumble. Really, that was a heck of a play. I believe the same guy who punched it out was also the one who recovered it. That was a kind of a crazy scramble for it. I think it was Donovan Jackson there. I thought he was going to
Josh
land
Simmons was
on
over there too.
Yeah, I thought he was going to land on it, and somehow
Should just kicked it out of bounds. Scooted on out of bounds.
Yep. And there's Jack Sawyer. That was Jack Sawyer on the forced fumble on that. I think Cody Simon was the one who recovered that one. Yeah.
Correct.
And so that was really the play that was sort of the nail in the coffin for Iowa, where Ohio State had just scored to go up 14-0, and then immediately, boom, turnover deep in the Iowa end, and the Buckeyes cashed that in right away. Mike Freno says Washington just completely mismanaged the final 30 seconds, cost them 2 shots at the end zone, and ultimately had a field goal blocked. 6+ points left on the field by Washington.
You can't afford to do that.
Washington is not good enough that they have that kind of a margin for error.
And we've seen Michigan able to win games because teams help them along. If you don't help Michigan, they're going to have a really difficult time beating you. If you help them and you leave points on the field, then you're going to have a difficult situation at the end of the game when don't be surprised especially if Jack Tuttle's lighting you up. And Donovan Edwards, if you're not going to tackle Donovan Edwards, you're going to need all of the field goals that you can get.
Yep.
Preferably touchdowns if you're Washington.
I think we're caught up.
All right.
We're caught up on
All right.
questions. So before we wrap, I think we just one more time want to let you guys know this is going to be a big week. This is a week that we've been talking about for since basically since expansion came out, and since Oregon sort of became, when it became apparent that Michigan was likely not going to be one of the 2 best teams in the Big Ten, this was a game that we've been looking forward to going out to Oregon and see a game there. I've been excited to see a game in Autzen. Just setting aside the top 5 matchup, I was super bummed. There was a lot that was a bummer about 2020.
Right.
I'll go out on a limb and say that. But the fact that we didn't get to make that trip, we had big plans. We're going to go see JT Tuimoloau play high school football. We're going to see Emeka Egbuka play high school football. We're going to go see that game and then book that. That was one of those games that got canceled. That was going to be, this is one of these venues that I've never been to the state of Oregon before, so this is going to be brand new. And it's one of those venues that over the last 20 years, you've seen a lot of iconic games there, and it's just a different, watching the game on Friday night, it's just like, it's a weird shape. There's sections where it looks like the stands are about 20 rows high, and then there's sections where it looks like the stands are 80 rows high. I'm super interested to see this in person. We'll try and get as much content as we can in terms of stadium tours, campus tours, all that kind of stuff, in addition to all the game coverage.
I am concerned personally because there's been mention that some of the press will be seated on the roof of the press box, which is never a great feeling.
Will we need water?
Well, I'm sure there'll be plenty of water there.
No.
But I am concerned anytime you put out on the roof of something, it's never ideal. Anytime Ohio State goes on the road, you always wonder, are they prepared for the Ohio State media? And the answer is generally no, unless they're in the Big Ten and they've done it. But this is going to be a difficult time for the Ohio State media. Just personally, I can assure you.
I know Tony wants to be negative about everything, but
yes,
man, I am so looking forward to this trip.
For sure.
I'm so looking forward to this game. I think this is going to be a great measuring stick for 2 teams that have had good starts to the season. But this is going to be one of the great measuring stick games of the year. Top 5 regular season game.
It was this
easily.
Georgia, Bama, or Bama, Texas as the top 3 games of the year that people talked about. And for me personally, this will be another bucket list. Last year at Notre Dame, that was amazing. This one is something you look forward to. So It will be amazing either way. Like whatever happens, it's just going to be something cool to experience.
Yeah.
And I'm sure the game will be entertaining because you've got a lot of entertaining players and entertaining coaches who want to put on a show. Chip Kelly going back home. You think he wants to lose that one?
Oh, does he have ties to Oregon?
Yeah, in fact, he
Interesting.
does.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Kevin is going to murder us if we don't wrap up soon.
Okay.
So that will make it harder for us to get on
If
the.
you're getting super chats, that you want to know.
But we will hope.
Yeah, we need to. Yeah, okay. We will wrap up. Thank you all for tuning in. Many of you. If you could hit the thumbs up before you go, we would appreciate that. Of course, continue to find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a member. Say hello to us there, and we'll talk to you guys later. We'll be back. We've got plenty of shows coming. As we said, hit the bell to be notified. So thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.